All right, so hi everyone, I'm Felix and I'm presenting this project also on behalf of my co-authors Rebekka, Kreling, Alicia, Gilbert and Leonard Reinecke, who are also here today, but also Alicia, Ernst, Benedikt, Rohr and Scharkow, who unfortunately could not make it here. And we are from the Media Psychology Lab at the University of Mainz in Germany. And there, one of our primary research interests is how and why people use entertainment media, and to look at this especially in the everyday lives of these media users. And increasingly, this research is challenged by algorithmic recommender systems, because traditionally many theories assume that people just select media in different situations for different reasons. And now, due to these shifts in agency and also support in selecting this content through algorithmic recommender systems, we thought it would be very interesting to come to a conference like this one, where there are a lot of people who work on this kind of stuff. And so, we thought we wanted to look at one very specific instance of algorithmically curated entertainment media use, because if you look at the literature, there's already a lot of research about TikTok, especially because this is like the prime example of personalized entertainment media. But we thought that also more traditional media use contexts like listening to music or watching a movie are also increasingly personalized. And we wanted to look at this with the example of Spotify, because Spotify specifically emphasizes personalization very centrally as key to the user experience on the platform, as you can see, for example, in this screenshot there. So even in playlists where you don't really see this, so where there's low transparency of this personalization, like here on the left side, the songs in these playlists are personalized to the user, but then there are also playlists that signal this very openly and say, this is made for you and this is your flashback or whatever. And although, of course, this is marketed as being great for user experience, there's also some academic research that shows that this is kind of more complicated, and that users build complicated socio-technical relationships with these recommendations. There's one great paper titled "Don't Mess with My Algorithm," so you don't want this changed. And so, we wanted to look at this, at the example of Spotify, and we would say that this is important specifically because on the one hand, negative experiences can reduce engagement with such platforms, but also if people can't really utilize the positive effects of using these entertainment media, this is also bad for users' well-being. And we argue that it's kind of unclear from previous research, or there's research on these different areas, if these problems are more related to functional components of this personalization, so how it is designed, how it actually works, what it does, or to how users perceive this, so that they feel less in control, that they have less agency. And so we wanted to look at this in the everyday life of people using Spotify. And so we looked at two very broad facets of user experience enjoyment, which is very central to user experience research, but also to our research on entertainment, because enjoyment is very central to using entertainment media. But also we looked at serendipity, so making discoveries that are somewhat unexpected, but also perceived as relevant or useful by the user. And this is also very central to algorithmic design, but you can also look at this from a user experience perspective. Do users make this experience? And so we posed two research questions. So the first one, to what extent do these functional, so just an algorithm being there, a listening session being more strongly personalized than other listening sessions, but also perceptual components. So is this made transparent in the user interface? But also, how do users perceive that? Do they feel in control? And also, to what extent are they more generally aware or unaware of how algorithms work on these platforms? How do these contribute to users' situational enjoyment in a listening session and to their experience of serendipity? And to look at this in the everyday life of media users, we conducted a linkage study in which we combined the experience sampling method, which is an intensive longitudinal survey method in which we sent 6 SMS text messages to our participants, 144 students, over the course of 2 weeks, so 6 SMS per day. And we asked them to fill out a short survey. And this we linked with the Spotify API. So every time a participant opened the survey in the background, we accessed the songs that participants listened to prior to this survey. And this was very useful for 2 reasons. The first one is, you can see it in the screenshot on the right side, it's in German, but we could frame our survey questions. So we could say, like, on this day, at this time, so just before we asked, you listen to music, for example, this song and that song, and then we could ask them, for example, how much do you enjoy listening to this music? But also we could look at some of the contextual features of the listening episode. So for example, we could see if people selected music from an album or from a playlist that they created themselves, or if they selected music from some of these Spotify playlists that I showed at the beginning, which some of them have these interface features showing this is personalized and others don't have. So we could distinguish this. And then relevant for what I'm presenting here, we surveyed these variables that I already talked about. So most of these were single items, because of course you have to keep these questionnaires rather short, because participants have to fill them out multiple times a day. And so we looked at their enjoyment, their perceived serendipity. So did they find this unexpected, and did they find this useful? And we also asked them how they perceived the session. So to what extent was this algorithmically personalized? And before participants started with this ESM period, we also asked them once about different facets of algorithmic awareness. So are they aware generally that these the content on these platforms is personalized, that their own behavior on these platforms shapes how content is personalized, and also if they have concerns about that, that they don't really know how this happens. And so if we look at the results, first of all, we can see that algorithmically personalized listening is very common on these platforms. And also I want to point you specifically here at the interclass correlation coefficient, the ICC, which is rather small here, so 0.27 or 0.25, which suggests that only a small share of the variance in which situations do people select personalized music versus they select music themselves, is shaped by person-specific influences. So for example, some people just are more likely to select personalized music than others. So there's a lot, you can also see that in the plot here. So there's a lot of variance, which I think is just very interesting to look into that, to understand when do people choose to give away their agency, to just say, okay, algorithm, give me some music, and when do they choose to select music themselves. And so if we look at the results to our research questions, we can see first, if we start, it's a little bit small at the left column in the plot here, we can see that across all of these measures, so both a session in the everyday life of the users being more strongly personalized than usual for this person is associated with less enjoyment. And this is only very, very slightly weaker if this is more transparent in this session. And this is also the case for users' own perception of this curation. And very similarly, in the middle column, you can see that, again, across all of 3 of these measures, these sessions were perceived as more novel or unexpected, which is kind of unsurprising, right? If you let the music be curated for you, you don't really know what you're getting. And this is only a little bit less surprising for users who have high trait human algorithm interplay awareness, so who know that these suggestions are shaped by their own behavior, which is also not that surprising. But, and I think that is really interesting, we don't really across all of these see any interaction effects with users' trait algorithmic awareness. And we only see one instance here in the right column where users actually perceived these unexpected encounters with music as more useful, and they evaluated them positively, which was if sessions were with very high interface transparency, and also users had or were more than average or had a higher than average trait automated decision-making awareness. So users really need to know what's going on there. So they have to have a high trait awareness of this, and they also need to see it in the interface to evaluate this positively. And so summing this all up, yeah, we can say that algorithmic curation in the case of music listening kind of has differential effects. So it seems to reduce enjoyment in the sessions that we looked at, but it partially increases serendipity. And yeah, that's probably nothing new to many of you, but we can see here again that user awareness and interface transparency are really important to shape these effects. So the positive evaluation here only in this one effect here on the right. So practical implications of this, I think, could be that for streaming platforms, for example, over-reliance on algorithmic personalization, so Spotify going all in on this and saying like this is the only way that people want to listen to music to, it's maybe not the best for user experience. And yeah, again, to emphasize that user agency and transparency are really important in fostering positive experiences. And I think this is especially important because like this contribution, you probably knew about that, but this is like a study in the everyday life of users, the first study using this linkage design, so ESM plus digital trace data, to look at this in the context of music listening. And yeah, we can really highlight this nuanced design and also this variance if you think back to this scatter plot that you saw. So there's a lot more to explore. When do people really choose to listen to personalized music, and when do they want to select music themselves? So I put some future directions in there that could be done, like try, because we of course kind of broadly reverse engineered these algorithmic curation features from the API data. So obviously it would be very interesting to also try to very specifically manipulate some of these features in experimental designs. Then also kind of based on the limitation of the study, we only surveyed students. So probably if you use a more diverse sample, maybe this will get even more complicated and more diverse. And also we only looked at music listening. So again, if you also look at other entertainment contexts or other entertainment platforms, this will be more complex. So yeah, that's what I'm ending on here, would be just my question for you. So how can we explain all of this variance? What are the main and the most important aspects? That's what I'd be interested to talk about, and I'm interested in your views on that. Thank you very much.
Question for the organizers. If we could close out that window, as we've done with the left one, I don't know whether there is anybody from university here, because it's beautiful outside. You can see plants and the city, but it's hard to see your slides because the bright sun makes it. Sorry for asking this, because I had difficulty, and then I go to the question to you. You show us that plot. You have no color there.
Yeah,
it's intentional, I guess. It's a color coded shades of gray, but I see no real colors unless it's my eyes.
Yeah.
And do I have to interpret that, because you finally said, please give me some feedback? Thank you. I think it's much clearer now. Huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Now the question is, what are the axes, the horizontal and the vertical one? What do they mean? What are the colors? Because I can see there a color or a shade coding, and what is the? Yeah, that makes.
I'm gonna try. Okay, now.
Okay, if we can.
Like that.
Participants and then.
Yeah. Okay, I'll tell you.
Okay.
So the y-axis is just each individual participant. So we had 144 participants. So each row is one participant, and then the x-axis is time of day. So this is just from midnight at one day to midnight the next day. And so we can just see people listen to music across most of the day, and it's very, very broadly distributed. And then the color or the shades of black represent the degree of algorithmic curation in the session. So we calculated a score from this API data representing the amount of songs that were selected in a listening session that were selected from the Spotify playlist that I showed at the beginning. And so the darker the color, the more strongly personalized this session was. And I would say, I don't know if you see anything in there, but I would say you don't see any patterns in there. So that was my main argument that I wanted to make. There's a lot of variance. There's not really any way you would see like, okay, one person only listens to personalized music, another person only listens to music they choose themselves, or they only do it in the morning, or they only do it in the evening, but it's just like all over the place.
These guys never sleep to start.
Yeah, and that also, it's students, right?
But there is a concentration on the top and in the middle of the tape. There is a concentration
Mm-hmm.
It's just arbitrary. It's random. You haven't ranked them somehow. They're just random, the participants, right? Each line is one participant.
Right.
Correct?
Yes.
So just happens that at the top you see more darker and bigger
that's
dots, but that's rather random.
Okay. Yeah, that's random. I guess maybe if we wanted to improve the plot, we could also arrange them according to some socio-demographic, for example, and see if there's a pattern.
Okay, can I just follow up on the main finding? The main finding of is that you curated the algorithmic produced streams do not produce high user satisfaction. People are not happy.
Yeah, even it's a negative effect. So there's less enjoyment, there's less satisfaction.
Surprising in a way, because we know that all these they put a lot of effort to personalize and use data from others similar to you people and also your past history, and they combine these two in order to produce you a satisfactory experience. Yes. And you say that this is not how they would do it. Okay, and is this
that's what we see when people use it in their everyday lives, at least. And to some extent, I would say some explanation for that could be that obviously people enjoy listening to their own music more. So if you select music yourself, you'll probably select your favorite music, and you'll enjoy that a lot more than maybe different music. But there are situations, and that's again what I'm getting at here with all this variance, where you want to discover something new, and that can be very enjoyable. But apparently right now, this is not always the case, because then we wouldn't see this effect.
Just an idea here would be, which is as you described your author, that this is very surprising, the randomness of this image. I would relate this because I can imagine myself focusing in listening music, where I actively select the music I want to listen to, or music is something in the background while I'm focusing on other activities like studying, etc. So if I had related this behavior, not just from the random daily life of people without looking into more detail of the tasks they were engaged with and what their focus was, they might find interesting. You might find interesting patterns there, which are missing here because you don't have this kind of.
We actually surveyed some of the additional activities. So we looked at or we asked people what they did while they listened to music. I didn't do analysis about this for the talk here, so we can look at that.
you introduced the serendipity factor in your algorithmic work. I mean, you try to create diversity in your recommendations in order to attract engagement. I mean, you try to have different or new non-personalized items. How can you measure the diversity, the serendipity? How you can find, if there is an algorithmic way to find what is the new song or something that will attract the user, except from the usual context-based filtering that you use for personalization? How can you find something that is new or it includes serendipity or diversity? It's very difficult to find something out of the box of the recommendation in order to attract the engagement of the user. It's like the news that we try to have to find news outside of the news bubble.
Yeah.
We have to select other news that maybe it's not part of the personalization, but will attract the user. It would be important for the reader to read that news. Do you have any metrics in order to find which is the correct diversity item that will be included?
We only have very limited data on this because I'm not Spotify and I'm also not collaborating with Spotify on this research. We actually selected Spotify because you can get a lot more data than with other entertainment platforms right now through the API. So you can get some content features. You can get information about the energy of the music, about the balance of the music, about, I don't know, some metrics about that. And we also tried to look at some diversity measures, how this impacts enjoyment. I don't remember all of that, but I can look up some of the effects that we saw there if you're interested in that. But yeah, we only very limited data.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.